My career and how I got into business. It was 65 years ago, so it's pretty hard to remember. But I left school at the age of 16, and because I wanted to get out into the commercial world, and I spent a total of a year working as an audit clerk and then as a salesman in my father's furniture store, and neither of those worked out too well, so I decided to take a trip to Melbourne in December '57. And while I was there, I had an uncle in Newcastle who invited me to visit them for the weekend. So I went up there, and unbeknown to me, he was in the games business. So to cut a long story short, I came back to Perth in April the following year with a bunch of amusement games, and that's how it all started. Well, Time Zone started because we had a bit of an image problem in those days, and I could see the McDonald's and the Hungry Jack's chains developing and creating family restaurants with a good reputation. I thought, why can't we do the same? So we decided to create a brand which was associated with good, wholesome entertainment, not just for kids but for families. And we focused on that over the years, and now it's generally accepted. Yeah, well, I think the lessons you learn in any business is the need to be absolutely focused. I think there are three primary objectives. One is to watch out for opportunities, because every day many opportunities pass us by and we don't even notice them. So then you've got to immediately, if you see one, you've got to immediately take plans to take advantage of that opportunity. And that involves planning, it involves buy-in from the people that help you. People have actually got to be fired with enthusiasm, because if they're not, they tend to get fired with enthusiasm. And lastly, the important thing I've learned is you never procrastinate. You've got to be absolutely dedicated. I like to use the analogy of a sporting team. Everybody knows that right now the Dockers are doing really well, and the Eagles are trying to avoid the wooden spoon for the year. And physically, there's really not much difference. I think all players in both teams have the same physical capabilities, but one has a greater ability to focus on the objective, and the objective, of course, is to win the premiership. So I think that's really the difference, being totally focused, being totally committed to the objective. You don't work 9 to 5, you work 5 to 9. And often that's 7 days a week. And I think whatever business somebody chooses to be in, I think they're the sort of commitments that you need. And looking at those three core things, watch out, being immediate, and never procrastinating. If you take the first letter of those three words, you get the acronym WIN. So what inspired me to go to start a charitable foundation? Well, look, I came to the conclusion that if you are fortunate enough, as I have been, to create some wealth, you come to the realisation pretty soon in life that you can't take it with you, because wealth is a commodity which stays in the community. If you create a lot of wealth and you squander it, well, that merely transfers the wealth to somebody else, but the wealth stays there. And that's what we call contribution to GDP. And I thought, there's a lot of need in the community from charities and other organisations, and the best way to service that need is to create more wealth. Australia has a GDP of about $2.1 trillion. I think the government revenue, federal government revenue, is about $620 billion. WA accounts for about 300 billion of the national revenue, and I think the WA government has a budget of about $40 billion. We punch above our weight because we're 10% of the population and we're about 16% of the GDP. So the whole point is that even if you take West Australia in isolation, there's 300 billion in GDP. Less what the government takes, 40, that's 260 billion in wealth that could potentially be redistributed. And I think there's a great opportunity to increase that. I mean, traditionally, the economy grows between 2 and 3 points per year, but it has grown as much as 8% in a year. And if we could build the GDP to grow at 8%, we could double the size of the economy every 9 years, in fact, it works out. So I think there's a real challenge and an objective there, and I think that WA is well placed. You know, it's the only state that generates a budget surplus. All the other states operate in deficit. You know, that's of course driven mainly by the fact that 27% of government revenue comes from royalties from mining, and they can't rely on that forever. But nevertheless, they're in a very strong financial position, and I think there's a really great opportunity for this state to build infrastructure to attract start-up companies, not just locally, but from the East Coast and internationally from around the world to make Perth and WA as a whole a real regional innovative hub. And I'm very excited about the role that Malka has now an opportunity to play in that development. Well, Malka is the name of my paternal grandmother, and she was quite an entrepreneur. She used to buy up old houses and renovate them and rent them out. And I think that's probably the inspiration for me, so that's why we called it Malka Foundation. 20% of our budget goes towards general charities, but the rest of it goes towards promoting entrepreneurial education, support, in the hope that, you know, we can create a lot more successful startups. I mean, you know, I just read recently that there's 1,300 unicorn companies. A unicorn company is a company that has a market value of $1 billion or more, that it's not publicly listed. And you know, there's very few in Australia, and you know, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 in Western Australia. Some examples are companies that were developed here, like Canva and VGW, who are both unicorn companies. But you know, Canva's moved its office to Sydney, and I believe that VGW are considering moving offshore as well. So it would be good if we could have an infrastructure here in WA to not only to secure the local companies that do make good, but attract those from other states and other parts of the world that can contribute towards the WA economy. Well, look, I hope that we will have played a part in a lot of startups becoming successful companies. I should add that the odds are low. I mean, only about 2% of the population will start their own business, and of that, 10% of those, or 0.2%, will develop long-term stable businesses. So, you know, I can't expect that we're going to create thousands of new business opportunities, but I hope that we will contribute towards a number of successful companies in the next 10 years. And maybe, you know, who knows, we might see 1 or 2 of them unicorn companies, which would be a great achievement if we can do that.